Kate from Kate&Barrel Designs here with a French Provincial Dresser makeover. This was a customer-owned dresser that she picked up at a store and had delivered to me so I could perform a makeover on it for her. So here I'm just going through and taking off all the hardware. The hardware actually it was not just screwed in, it also had nails, so you'll see me peeling it kind of off. Next up, I wanted to go through and do some tea tree and mint salve in order to kind of get rid of the musty smell that was in the dresser. I did this first too because my client mentioned that she is sensitive to smells, so I wanted as much of the smell to have dissipated before this dresser goes home, but also wanted it to have the properties of deodorizing. I let the tea tree and mint salve sit actually for about 3 days as I continue to work on the dresser, and then my final step was to actually go back and wipe out anything that hadn't soaked in. So unfortunately, I had a video technical issue and missed an entire part of sanding down this dresser. This is kind of my second sand that I'm doing here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a rough up. The one thing you guys didn't see as well is that I actually did spray down this dresser with Krud Kutter and then clean it with water before I went ahead and did the sand on it. So that is something that I didn't videotape, but just want to make sure you guys are aware of it. And then what I'm doing is going through with a tack cloth and removing any dust remnants that are on there left over from the sanding. Next up is our Wise Owl primer in a dark gray. I chose dark gray because I feel as though it was my best base coat to go with the atomic blue that the customer has chosen to go over the top of this. And she wanted a full paint job. So she wanted the top painted as well as the base. So that is what we're going through and gonna do for her. So I like to use the primer, one, because the blue allows for the blue to have better coverage, in my opinion. And I also use the primer because I'm making sure that even though I'm using the chalk synthesis, I want to make sure that I have the absolute best adhesion. Yes, I went through all the proper steps, but I want to make sure there's no funky bleed through, there's no discoloration or anything like that that could possibly happen to affect my final color on this. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 coats of the primer, and you're going to see it really fast. You're going to see me jump to that second coat pretty quick. I promise this is a sped up video, so there's a lot of time between primer coats. I do recommend though, if you're in a kind of more damp climate or it's colder where you are, you definitely wait at least 4 to 6 hours and sometimes 24 hours between coats of your primer. So you'll learn to know how far you can push it based on the piece that you're working on and your experience as you continue to paint and work on vintage pieces. I'm really terrible at cinematography, obviously. Every single time I look at this dresser, it looks crooked. So I'm really sorry that there's pure crookedness going on here in my frame. But essentially, you're getting the idea, right, of what we're doing here. So this is the atomic blue. I'm going ahead and putting on my first coat. I used FIFO bottles. So the atomic blue is actually sitting in a FIFO bottle that was dispensed from the original canister. And then I'm going ahead and I have a cardboard palette that I utilized, and I'm putting it on from there. I'm also using my Klingon brush. So I believe I'm using an 040 in this video. And just making sure I'm going through, getting a nice clean coat of coverage on my first go through. Making sure I'm pulling out the drawers just like I did when I did the primer to get my edges and get the top of the drawers as well. Granted, you can't see them, but when you pull it out, it would look a little funky if that was brown and the rest of it was the blue. So when I went ahead to do the top, I grabbed my B14 block brush. I showed it there really quickly. I love the block brush. Number one, it allows for larger coverage, right? Those larger areas, and smoother coverage across those larger areas. So here I go. I'm just going through doing the second coat. What I will tell you on this is that I had done a light sand. So I took a RAD pad, a very fine RAD pad, and did a light sand of my first paint coat. And now I'm going through with my second coat of paint. The other thing that I will utilize here that you'll see pop up every once in a while is that I'm going to have my mister bottle. So that white bottle right there, it's actually a beauty supply mister bottle. You can get them on Amazon, any beauty supply store. I absolutely love utilizing a mister like that, especially instead of a squirt bottle, because a squirt bottle doesn't provide the same kind of misting properties. This is literally like a mister where you're sitting outside in the hot Arizona sun here and you're on a patio and there are misters coming out. So that's kind of the mist that it's providing. It's a really nice light mist, but it allows for that kind of final smooth coverage across the paint and minimizes some of those brush strokes. Again, still using my Klingon brush, and I sprayed the top, and I'm using my block brush and going across. I use long strokes after I get the paint in there. So here you can see I did a sand, again, a final sand over with my RAD pad, just to make sure that it's nice and smooth across the entire piece. And I'm utilizing the Wise Owl furniture wax and going through with my 1-inch round brush and just covering it with clear wax and making sure that I'm getting into everywhere. So I move the brush up and down vertically, around and around, back and forth, and you just want to make sure you're getting that full coverage. You can see the huge difference in the color rendering from the sanded parts to the now waxed areas as well. And it just makes a massive difference in the color rendering, the richness of the color. The wax just really I out. One thing with the Wise Owl wax is that you're going to want to let it have some time to dry. So it does need some dry time. I typically leave it for 12 to 24 hours. Although I will do sometimes a wipe off and then leave it. So here I believe I went ahead and did a wipe off with a microfiber cloth. I like to use the microfiber because it really just gets off a lot of that excess. So you'll see me with that orange cloth in there, and I'm just quickly, I wish I could do it as quickly as this video is doing it, but just quickly going through and wiping off that excess. And then again, something that you won't see is that I will do a second pass of a wipe off later on the next day or two, just to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of extra sitting on top. All right, next up, we get to put the hardware back on. I feel like the hardware is just that final touch that makes the piece really come together, and this hardware is stunning. I absolutely loved it. So the great thing is that my customer didn't want a super high sheen, and she wanted some of the patina left on. And I know it doesn't look like there's patina because it looks so bright and new, but there is still some patina left on this hardware. Essentially, all I did was clean it with some Brasso and then polish it up and put it back on. So the Brasso does take a little bit longer than just, respraying, let's say, with like a shiny gold or silver or something like that. However, this really keeps it more natural looking, and these probably are pretty close to where they were when they were brand new now. So you can see me going through with a hammer. I've got to get those nails back in to support everything. And we've got our final reveal. I also added some black wax in here for some accenting, and it turned out absolutely stunning. If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and thanks so much for watching. Comments below.